Hello and welcome to Spill the Tea. True Stories, the place where real life is more fascinating than fiction. Sit back, pour yourself a cup of tea, and let's dive into the moments that stay with us forever. We're starting now. Laura carefully arranged the fragrant buns on the tray. At first, the thought of wrapping each one separately crossed her mind, but she immediately dismissed it. She knew they would be bought up instantly, and wrapped in film, they would lose their appeal. Let them lie there, a feast for the eyes. "Brought your five-stock pastries?" A sarcastic voice sounded behind her, and Laura involuntarily flinched in surprise. "God, Valerie, why do you sneak up like that? It's as if you're deliberately trying to scare me." Valerie, her colleague, smirked crookedly. "And how else? What if you're up to something fishy here? Then I'll have leverage over you. I can use it when the opportunity arises." Laura furrowed her brows. "What a fool you are, Valerie." Valerie patted her shoulder. "Oh, come on. I just blurted it out. It's a joke. And I'm not sneaking up at all. I always walk silently. As if you didn't know." Laura didn't answer. She knew Valerie too well. You could expect any nastiness from that person. Laura had witnessed Valerie cheating customers more than once, sometimes shortchanging them, sometimes not counting out the change correctly, and sometimes even forgetting to put the item in the bag. She was a sly one. She knew exactly who she could pull a scam on with impunity. She had an amazing intuition. She could spot from afar who could be swindled and who was not worth messing with. Of course, Laura didn't report Valerie's tricks to anyone, not even the owner. Gossiping and snitching was not in her nature. But Valerie adored it. It was precisely because of her that one of the saleswomen lost her job 6 months ago. Valerie skillfully set up the situation and whispered all sorts of fabrications to the owner. That's why Laura had no doubt. If Valerie found even the slightest hint that could tarnish her reputation, she would certainly use it. But Laura was beyond reproach. She was impeccably honest, never secretly appropriating goods. She always treated customers conscientiously, and she had a wonderful relationship with the shop owner, Mr. Davison. From the moment she started, he showed her extraordinary warmth. Laura felt that he treated her with a special, almost fatherly tenderness. He saw a daughter in her, and he even allowed her to sell her own buns so she could supplement her meager budget, even just a little. Perhaps this is what made Valerie hold a grudge against Laura and look for any opportunity to ruin her reputation. However, Valerie couldn't just slander her. Mr. Davison trusted Laura too much to believe anyone's gossip without proof. She needed solid evidence. "Something's quiet about you today. I've asked you how many times and you act like you don't hear," Valerie remarked. "What? Did you ask something?" Laura snapped back. "I said, you look a bit rough today. Didn't sleep, I bet. Your boyfriend kept you up?" Valerie asked with a sarcastic smile. Laura frowned again, answering with clear irritation. "What boyfriend? Valerie, you're starting to get on my nerves. I don't have anyone. You know I'm not up for romances." Valerie slowly adjusted her hair, took out a tiny mirror, touched up her lipstick, and snapped it shut. Then, looking Laura in the eye, she insisted, "And it's a great pity you don't have a man. How many years has it been since your beloved left you? 5 years, no less." "6 years have passed," Laura corrected gloomily. "How do you even live 6 years without a man, Laura? You should have gone through a whole herd by now, and you're still moping alone. If you were married, that's another matter. But look at me. After last night with my husband, I'm glowing. And look at yourself in the mirror. A pale shadow, dark circles under your eyes. If you hadn't slept because of a man, you'd look different. And your empty bed will soon turn you into a mummy." "Valerie, have you completely lost your mind? What men? My daughter is sick, that's why I didn't sleep. I sat by her all night. Awful cough again, nothing helps. And you with your romantic affairs. I'm happy for you that everything is wonderful, but I couldn't care less." Valerie demonstratively turned away and got busy with her duties. She was clearly trying to make her colleague jealous, boasting about her personal happiness against the backdrop of Laura's loneliness. She wanted to sting her where it hurt the most, and it infuriated her that Laura remained unperturbed. And Laura at that moment was only thinking how wonderful it would be if all the buns sold today. Then she would take the money earned and immediately go to the pharmacy for medicine for Alice. The shift went on as usual. In a few hours, almost all the buns were sold, only a couple were left. Valerie looked at the radiant Laura with unconcealed envy. The cinnamon buns had indeed become popular with customers. They were uncommonly successful. Regular customers kept asking when Laura would bring her baking again. They said they simply melted in your mouth and you wanted to buy them again and again. Laura smiled bashfully. Mr. Davison allowed her to bring them 3 times a week, and each time they disappeared from the counter before closing. Finally, the last bun found its buyer. Laura quickly counted out the necessary sum from the till, made a note in the thick journal under the counter, and neatly put the money in her pocket. "What's with the till manipulations? Come on, turn out your pockets, hands on the counter." Laura flinched but then laughed with relief. "Mr. Davison, you too, you scared me." The shop owner shook his head sympathetically. "Laura, you've been so on edge lately and you look terribly tired. Problems?" "No, nothing out of the ordinary. Everything's the same. Alice is coughing badly again. I just don't know how to help. Here, I took the money for the baking. I'll go to the pharmacy, buy her something. I really hope she'll feel better right away." Mr. Davison looked anxiously at her exhausted face. He felt unbearably sorry for her. No one showed her care, while she herself bore the entire burden of responsibility. She had to shoulder such a weight on her fragile shoulders that they could barely bear it. But Laura stubbornly rejected any help that Mr. Davison sincerely offered her. She was terrified of being indebted to anyone, although he offered support from the bottom of his heart, without any conditions. And all this was the legacy of her damned ex-husband. He constantly drilled into her, while she was on maternity leave, that she owed him everything. To sit silently with the child, manage the household herself, carry bags from the shops, meekly endure humiliation, patiently wait for him from his nightly escapades with whomever and wherever, and then even put him to bed when he was drunk. He made her forget that she was a person, and most importantly, a woman. He turned her into a frightened creature, afraid to utter a sound. Mr. Davison was convinced. All this affected the girl, making her so weak and sickly. "Of course, Laura. Leave an hour early today. I'm letting you go. You'll have time to stop by the pharmacy and be with your daughter. Valerie can manage somehow." Laura smiled gratefully and thanked the owner warmly. Valerie, of course, heard everything. As soon as Mr. Davison left, she immediately moved closer to Laura. "Look, soon you'll be doing nothing at all. The boss will pay you just for batting your eyelashes at him." "Valerie, there you go again. What nonsense are you talking? He just treats me kindly, that's all. I'm very grateful to him for that. He restored my faith that there are good people in the world." But Valerie just narrowed her eyes and smiled venomously. "Oh yes, kind, exactly. Only behind such kindness usually lie completely different intentions. He's probably counting on something more than just your gratitude. Hasn't he hinted yet how you can thank him for his care? It's a matter of time. Soon there will be transparent hints, you'll see. I've been around the block in such matters, seen hundreds of similar stories. As soon as a man does a woman a favor, a demand for gratitude immediately arises. And I don't need to explain what kind of gratitude we're talking about. Bed, Laura, only bed. Men always have one thing on their minds. Let me give you some good advice. Don't play hard to get when he suggests getting closer. Caress him, be gentle, show attention, and you'll have a life of paradise. Who knows, maybe you'll even quit your job, and he'll even set your daughter up." Laura almost choked with indignation. She flushed, imagining what Valerie was talking about. Looking around fearfully, afraid that someone might have overheard them, She hissed. "What nonsense are you spouting, Valerie? You've completely lost it. Mr. Davison would never allow himself such a thing. He's married. He's like a father to me. You wouldn't understand that. I don't want to talk about this anymore. If you mention anything like this again, I'll stop talking to you forever." Valerie snorted dismissively and walked away. And Laura couldn't recover for a long time. Could there be even a grain of truth in her colleague's words? Laura felt literally sick at the thought that Mr. Davison was capable of such hints. It wasn't that she found him unpleasant or unattractive, but that in her eyes he was a mentor, a friend, almost a father, anyone but a man she could look at as a potential partner. Laura left the shop an hour earlier than usual. On the way to the pharmacy, her thoughts involuntarily returned to her ex-husband. It was because of him that she didn't wait for David from the army. Keith appeared in her life and deprived her of her senses in a matter of hours. They met at some party and hadn't been apart since. Within 2 months they were married. Laura still couldn't forgive herself for not even finding the strength to personally inform David about the marriage. She just sent a letter and then left with her newfound husband for another city. But the marriage turned out to be far from rosy. The first 5 years everything went smoothly. They lived in complete harmony. But as soon as she got pregnant, and this happened exactly after 5 years, Keith changed dramatically. His pregnant wife seemed to become repulsive to him. He constantly tormented her, avoided intimacy, stopped being a support. The pregnancy was difficult. She was tormented by terrible morning sickness, but Keith never showed any involvement. After the child was born, the situation only worsened. He dreamed of a son, but a daughter was born, and he endlessly reproached Laura, blaming her for this. Throughout the entire maternity leave period, he found reasons for reproaches and didn't help with anything, and he spent weekends carousing with friends until morning. Laura guessed that there were women involved, but she was afraid to even hint at it. Laura tried to return to work after maternity leave, but it didn't work out. Alice was constantly sick, and eventually Laura was forced to quit. The husband's abuse became even more sophisticated, and after 6 months, he simply kicked her out. The apartment belonged to him. "I don't need you anymore," he declared, "and your constantly sick daughter either. Grab her and go back to your mother. There's nothing for you here. I've already filed for divorce and will marry again soon. I've found someone completely different. Beautiful, cheerful, not like you. A pathetic imitation of a woman." Laura and her daughter returned to their hometown. This marriage left a deep scar on her fate. There was no trace left of the former carefree, giggling girl. Before the world stood an exhausted, frayed, perpetually tired woman, struggling with all her might to feed her child. Thank goodness they were able to stay with her mother, otherwise they wouldn't have had enough money for rent. They wouldn't have survived. Laura came to her senses from her heavy thoughts only when she reached the pharmacy door. She bought everything she needed and headed home. The next morning, Laura came to her shift, and they were met with very unexpected news. Mr. Davison was urgently leaving for the capital with his wife. She had serious health problems, and during his absence, he was leaving his son-in-law in charge. "Does he have a daughter?" Laura whispered, surprised, turning to Valerie. "I didn't know. Why did he never talk about it?" "Quiet, I thought you knew. She's been gone for many years. She was very young, only 25. Oncology. Something with a brain tumor, it seems. They say she suffered terribly, screamed in pain. Horrible. But her husband didn't leave her. He was by her side until the very end. Although, of course, there were rumors that he married her for gain, as if he loved another, but she left him. But that's all speculation. Who knows what was really going on? The main thing is that after his daughter's death, Mr. Davison maintained excellent relations with his son-in-law, and now he will be in his place. It will be interesting to see what kind of person he turns out to be and what to expect from him. Maybe he'll let me bring my baking too," and Valerie giggled nastily. The next day, Mr. Davison arrived with his son-in-law to brief him on everything. When he led him to the staff to introduce him, Laura felt the ground open up beneath her feet. It was as if she had been thrown into the air and immediately dropped. She froze, unable to breathe, and her heart pounded with such furious force as if it were tearing itself out. Before them stood David, the very one, her failed fiancé, whom she didn't wait for from the army, in person. Strangely enough, he had hardly changed. But Laura? She had become completely different, so much so that he didn't even recognize her. His gaze swept over her without any interest, expressing nothing. He smiled politely at everyone, as if saying that working with him would be easy, as long as they didn't break the rules or get out of line. But his gaze didn't linger on Laura's face for a single moment. Mr. Davison led David further, explaining the intricacies of the work, and Laura spent the rest of the day on pins and needles, flinching at any sound of his voice, mistaking him for customers or Valerie. By the end of the day, Mr. Davison and David left. Laura felt heavy-hearted and very awkward. Now she would have to see David every day. What if he remembers after all? Or on the contrary, never recognizes her and treats her as a stranger, like everyone else? Laura didn't know which was worse. But the denouement came that same evening. Valerie left early, and Laura stayed to wait for the security guard, who was late. The shop needed to be locked up. Laura was already holding the keys in her hand when she heard the door slam. "The shop is closed, sorry," Laura shouted, coming out from behind the counter. And then she froze, not knowing how to react. Before her stood David. He was looking at her intently, and the expression on his face gave no clue to his thoughts. And then he said, "Hello, Laura. Hello again." "You recognized me?" Laura breathed out. "I thought I had changed completely." David shook his head negatively. "No, that's just how it seems to you." And they fell silent. Laura frantically tried to think of something to say, and then she realized it was now or never. "David," Laura began, forgive me for that awful thing I did. You can be sure, I paid for it in full and am still paying." "You know, we were very young," David replied. "I understood that a little later. At first I was angry, even hated you. But then I realized I expected too much from you. I think that's what pushed you away. I just needed to love, and I only demanded. And you met someone who just loved, asking nothing in return, but giving. My mistake." Laura lowered her gaze. "He was a monster," she whispered. "He broke me. I thought I deserved it. I shouldn't have treated you like that. This is my punishment." David wanted to say something but didn't have time. Laura's phone rang. She answered. It was her mother calling. "Yes, what? I'll be right there soon," Laura cried out and suddenly burst into tears. "What happened?" David took Laura firmly by the shoulders. "Alice, my daughter. She's ill, she's choking. I need to go home immediately." David quickly locked the shop. He drove Laura home in his car. Alice was having such a terrible coughing fit that she started choking. She couldn't get enough air. David immediately took both of them to the hospital. He went in himself and seemed to start taking charge. Everything got moving somehow, and Alice was given help very quickly. The threat passed. When the doctor came out and announced that the girl would be kept under observation for a day, but the danger had passed, Laura couldn't hold back and cried. David hugged her tightly and whispered, "Everything will be all right." It turned out Alice was having an acute allergic reaction. Laura had been treating a simple cough, not suspecting that the reason was completely different. David took the situation into his own hands. A couple of days later, he brought in a well-known doctor from another city. He thoroughly examined the girl, prescribed a comprehensive examination. David covered all the expenses. He sent the test results to the doctor, and he selected an effective treatment. For the first time in many years, Alice's cough subsided. The treatment was long and expensive. Perhaps she would have to take medication for life, although the doctor didn't rule out that the allergy might pass with age. The main thing was that the true cause of her constant ailments had been established. Laura was over the moon with happiness. Alice was simply unrecognizable. She stopped being constantly sick, became cheerful, turned into a completely normal child. And all this was solely David's merit. 2 months passed. All this time, David and Laura only called each other occasionally, mainly about matters concerning Alice. As soon as the girl fully recovered, the calls stopped. And soon, Mr. Davison returned with his wife. She had been successfully treated, although she required lengthy rehabilitation, but that no longer seemed so terrible. The owner resumed his place in the shop, and David seemed to vanish. Laura felt unbearably lonely. Her soul ached. She realized that she felt something much deeper than just gratitude towards David. And then, about 2 weeks after Mr. Davison's return, David appeared on the doorstep of her apartment. It was a weekend. He came with a luxurious bouquet, a huge box of chocolates, and a whole bag of goodies for Alice. The girl immediately grabbed the bag and ran off to her room. Laura's mother delicately withdrew to the living room, leaving them alone in the kitchen. And David confessed that he could no longer keep his feelings to himself. He still loved Laura. His love had never faded. He married Mr. Davison's daughter, trying to forget Laura, but it proved useless. Now his feelings flared up with redoubled strength and simply gave him no peace. He realized, if he didn't open up to Laura now, he would regret it his whole life. I love you even more than back then, in our youth, and I can't hide it anymore. Laura just hugged him back, not saying a word. 6 months passed. David and Laura became husband and wife, and he moved her and her daughter in with him. Laura no longer appeared at the shop. She quit her job altogether. David was a wealthy man and didn't want his wife to overwork herself. Laura dedicated herself to her home, taking care of herself, her daughter, and her husband. Mr. Davison was sincerely happy for them. He considered Laura almost like a daughter, and David like a son. Their relationship remained warm and trusting. Laura was transformed. She stopped seeing herself as unattractive, the exhaustion disappeared, the tiredness was gone. She truly blossomed. David's love brought her back to life, and she was immensely happy that everything turned out this way. Perhaps to find such immense happiness, they both had to go through mistakes. Only by experiencing them could they truly appreciate the true value of love.